So today we're going to talk about how to create that misty look in watercolors. You've seen those beautiful mountains and the fog is coming down and it gives it that I want to say I don't want to say that. I was going to say it's like creepy. It's not creepy. It's actually beautiful, calming, serenity. Those are better words for that. Not creepy. Creepy is kind of like the fog mist for Halloween, right? Woo. For that today, we're going to do a couple little demos. I'm going to show you what and how you can create that misty or foggy look with watercolor. So stick around. With my patrons this past Sunday, we did a live paint along and we painted this little one. This was from unsplash.com, so you guys can grab that for free. I did a little prep work and tried it a couple of times, but one of them I added some of my gold to it and it was really pretty. So I thought we'd go over that today really quickly, how you can create that misty look with watercolor. All right, before we start, I do want to talk a little bit about paper. And we had a discussion about paper in my Patreon group because many people have tried the block paper, Arches block paper. But let me tell you, the 22 by 30 full sheets are amazing. And I just cut them down. I find it much less expensive, and you can just cut these down to size, whatever you want. So I'm going to show you today on my sketchbook how I created this fog. And look at these chickens. I've been having a lot of fun with my sketchbook. I may end up doing a whole series on my sketchbook by the end of the month or the next month coming up. We'll see. I've been playing with this paper, but if you want good paper, the Strathmore watercolor cards are incredible. I fold them in half and I get 200 of these 5x7 sheets to work with. So we are going to start out though, first of all, with the sketchbook. I just want to share with you what kind of frustrations you can get when you're not using good paper. And for putting in fog or lifting out color, you really need to have good paper. So like 100% cotton paper is good. So that's why I was saying if you use good quality like Arches, or if you use your Strathmore watercolor cards, it just works so much better. But I did want to show you here on not so good paper. You can see that I've got a nice wet into wet, but it's drying really quickly. And this paper actually is buckling very poorly on the underside, but you will really start to see a difference when I begin to lift some of the colors. Now remember, some colors are staining, others are not. So play with your colors ahead of time. Figure out which ones are more staining than others if you're having a hard time lifting out some of that paint. To create that misty look, you can see I started with that water. I added my first layer of color, which was a lighter shade, and then I added some darker shades over the top of that while it was all wet. So you can see I like the way it's working in here. It's smooth, it's a nice blend, it's soft. So we're going to let that dry. Meanwhile, I'm going to grab my Strathmore watercolor card paper, which I cut in half, and we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to do two of them on here. So I'm going to wet the paper again at the top with a very light color. We're going to add a little bit deeper tone. So this is like an olive green. And I'm going to pop that right over the top here. So we're going to start with a very light wash, kind of a yellowy tint. And you can see already how much better that is blooming on that paper. Gorgeous. And then adding a little bit of trees. So we can get even up on the top here where it's not wet. I can get some sharp defined lines, and I can already start to create those layers in the painting just by, hitting the top of that area where it's still dry and letting the rest of it blend. So let's mix up another color here, get a little bit darker. And we're going to go down below, and this time I'm going to go in with a little bit darker shade for the base color. Now the first one was very, very light. Again, you can see it almost looks like mist already. This one being darker, it looks like trees back there. And I've got that very sharp edge on the top. But if we soften that, you can see that it already starts to look more foggy around there. And again, I did that really quickly while it was still wet so that I don't have any sharp or hard edges on that. So you can see that little edge where it was dry before and I added the water to it. That didn't move a whole lot. So let's go ahead with another darker shade down below. And now I can start to scatter that a little bit. Now these look like pine trees to me, that color. The other one looks like it's got a little bit more light showing in there. So you can see I have a brush. It's pretty thick. This is a number 10. And, if you've got a brush, a round brush with a nice point on it, it doesn't really matter if you're using a larger brush, because if you've got that sharp point, that's what's going to make the difference, because you're just going to use the tip of that brush. Trees are not all perfect. They are unique, and the branches kind of come out everywhere. So I could even go in, this is nice and light. I could even take some of this color now. This should be dry enough. Yep. So see, that's not really moving anywhere now. And I can create more trees here. So it gives you that illusion of depth by just doing that. Now, this actually looks a little nicer because I've got even more colors going on. This is still pretty, but you can see where I've got a little maybe too dark, because I want all of those different values to give the illusion of some depth. I love having, more colors, because more colors will create more depth. Meanwhile, going back to this one, look how bubbly it is. Let's go ahead and add a little bit to this darker value in here. This is dry enough, so you can see I'm getting some nice, strong, distinctive lines in here now. So just some layers. And again, I'm not going into super a lot of detail for these trees. Now I could, do a little bit more like this, like the pines, if I wanted to. It doesn't hold the water quite as well. But for what it is, it's not bad. So I could even do some pen work in there. Who knows? So I'm going to let both of those dry, and then we're going to come back and we're going to create the fog. So now we're going to do the challenge of lifting. So I'm going to continue to use my bigger brush. Now I'm going to use just some water. I haven't done it on this paper yet. I haven't used this much for watercolors. I've done a couple in my sketchbook, which I might do a whole thing on sketchbook. This was fun. I did a bunch of chickens. All right, so I have just water on here now. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to take that water and I'm going to do this circular motion. Now you can see it's starting to re-wet that paper. So let's tap out some of that color and see if we can give that illusion of some fog. I don't like that sharp line there, so I'm going to wet that. Let's come down here so we don't see the bottom of those trees. And I could actually see some of the paper is already starting to lift. This is where people get a little frustrated. It's not as fun to work on. We're tapping off some of that green as I work through some of this. I do need to wet some of this down. I don't like those edges, so if you have edges, just soften them with some clean water. So this is what tends to happen when you don't have good paper. You can see actually pieces of this paper. It's just not meant to hold that water like really good watercolor paper is supposed to do. And that's where you'll find that frustration when you're working on things. So you can see this looks kind of foggy in there. It's probably not the best, but again, I'm working in that sketchbook. Probably not meant for this type of wet into wet. So, but you still get the illusion of a little bit of fog in there. So let's set this one aside and let me show you on the Strathmore watercolor paper. You want to make sure it's completely dry before you go in and start to remove. Let's just come right down through here. We can make that path through that foggy area anywhere we want. So you can see I'm just doing the scrubbing and the circular motion as I lift that paint up. Now, if you notice that your green is getting darker and darker, that's when you want to rinse your brush off, tap off the extra water, have some clean water again. You can go back in and look, I can lift out even more. I can get a brighter color in there. I can get rid of some of those hard edges up on the top. And give myself a little misty look back here. Maybe lift a little bit if it gets too dark. Come back in with some clean water. Let's just go right through those trees. Pick that up. Oops, I got a drop there. And you don't want that mist super perfect. I could take a small detail brush. Let's go in with, again, another darker color. I want this almost the consistency of cream now. I want this pretty dark. So you can see how much thicker this paint is. It's not real watery. And we can add in a couple more details in here. And then maybe we've got some that are in front, so this fog is in behind there. And that is how you can layer. Let's just do a big tree down in the front here. That brings it right up close to us. Again, that helps with giving yourself a little bit more depth in a painting. The other option we have is to use something like a bleed proof white if you find that it's just not bright enough. Practicing, playing around. This is where you are not as stressed because you're not doing a complete painting, so you don't have to worry about it coming out perfect. Please share them with me on social media, Facebook, Instagram. It's Kellie Chasse _ fine art. I would love to see them. So if you want to tag me so you can share it, I would be honored to see it. You can put the comments down below. Let me know if there is something that you're struggling with, and I would be happy to see if I can help. All right. I hope that helped you figure out mist and fog, and you will practice this on your own. If you want to join in on Patreon, you can watch that full demo. It's up there. I also have it set as a separate post. So if you don't want to join Patreon, that's okay, but you can purchase just the quick little mini course in there. Yeah, so thanks, like, subscribe. Thanks for being here, and we will see you in the next one.